His latest project as a sound portrait of Africa that is both an uncannily personal social experience. Well, that's bassist, composer and producer Shane Cooper and Mabuta's latest album titled Finding the Sun. Mabuta meaning eyelid in Japanese, comprises Bokani Dyer on keys, Sisonke Xonti on tenor sax, Fassie on trumpet, Reza Khota on guitar and Jonno Sweetman on drums. Now to tell us more about their new project, we're joined by the band leader, Shane Cooper. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Live. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great, thanks. Thanks so much for having me, and hello to all the viewers out there. It's really great to be here.
Speak to us about this new project. I mean, Finish the Sun, and what is the inspiration behind Finish the Sun?
I wrote most of this album during the course of 2020 and 2021. And I think because of all the heavy things that were going on, around us in South Africa and around the world at the time, I chose to write something that would uplift me. So this I consider to be the happiest album I've written yet. It's the second album I've done with the band Mabuta. And of course, I work with different projects. But for me, this is one of the most sort of inspired and uplifting bodies of work I've done. And I think I did that because I was seeking that kind of release and feeling myself day to day when I came into the studio to work on music during the course of the last few years. That was the energy I needed. And so I'm hoping that that same kind of feel that's also portrayed in this imagery on the front, I'm hoping that that kind of feeling is something that can be conveyed to the listener. I want to express something that is really uplifting and just a feel-good record.
Yeah. Now, I mean, it was ready. You were ready to go into studio at the beginning of 2020, and then COVID happened. What then happened afterwards?
Absolutely. We were scheduled to go into studio right at the beginning of 2020. I had a whole selection of new music I'd written specifically for the studio dates. And of course, when we went into lockdown, everything was shut down. It just wasn't possible for us to meet. We weren't allowed to. So I took a moment and I took a breather to sort of think about the body of work I had chosen. And again, I wasn't sure when we'd be able to get back into studio. So I had this kind of forced time to just, take a step back and really consider everything. And I ended up reworking some tunes and ultimately writing a completely new body of work, which is what you hear on this record now. At the same time, the drummer we were working with on the last record, he kind of had a career change. So I ended up, before we booked Jonno Sweetman, who you met earlier, I ended up deciding to record this with drummers from all around the world. I've been fortunate enough to travel over the years touring with different projects. So I've met a lot of great musicians all over the world, and in particular in Europe. So on almost every song here, there's a different drummer that has collaborated with us remotely from Switzerland, from Sweden, from Holland, an incredible drummer from Senegal. It's been an amazing process because we realized how much you can do remotely in these times, just as we're talking over Zoom right now. So it was a beautiful process to kind of unite these different ideas and different styles on the drums with my band, the rest of whom are based in South Africa. And I think the result is quite special because of that.
Yeah. I want to talk about this interesting title, Finish the Sun. I heard, you came up with this title and there's Tandin Tuli in there in the mix. Tell us a little, give us that story behind Finish the Sun title.
Absolutely. So in 2019, I was on a tour in Switzerland with Tandin Tuli and two Swiss artists, a sort of collab project. And I think it was autumn time. We were sitting outside in between rehearsals. And the sun was just starting to set. There were really tall buildings all around us. In autumn there, it's a good 10 degrees colder than autumn here. And as it was peaking, just coming down towards the building, someone suggested we go inside to continue the rehearsal. And I said, hang on, guys, let's not rush. Let's first finish the sun.
Yeah.
And it's something so simple. I just said it without thinking. But I remember thinking, that's quite nice. I'm going to use that as a song title, And it became a sort of mantra over the last few years to just take that extra time to enjoy the wholesome moments, a meal with a loved one, a walk in the park, the stuff that really counts. We're always rushing around answering WhatsApps and emails and going from project to project to meeting and forgetting to take the time to enjoy those things, the things that we're really going to remember in our last days, So this has become something that's become more and more important to me, and to really cherish those moments and make them count, not always watch something on our phones when we're having a meal on the go, really enjoy the flavors,
I mean, and This is your second project with Mabuta, and given how much that first project, I mean, Welcome to the World, it took so much of you physically and mentally. What did working on this particular project teach you about going in this direction and going at it again? Why, in fact, did you even decide, let's do it again, given how crazy the Welcome to the World did to you?
Absolutely. The first one was intense because of the crowdfunding campaign. I had to raise a large sum of money in very inventive and different ways to really record and release it independently. And a lot of the post-production on that first record, I learned how to do from YouTube tutorials. So it was an incredibly challenging experience. But the lessons I learned on that first album, I now have these skills, you know, for life. And of course, you keep growing and keep developing them. But those baseline skills that I learned from that first one have really helped in an immense way on this project. But more than that, you know, for me, music is just an incredible love. It is a passion. It is my job as well. But there's a certain thing that guides me sometimes when I decide to do a project with a particular band, you know. And at a certain point, I was like, I'm craving a thing with Mabuta. You know, Mabuta has a certain sound.
Yeah.
It's because of the incredible musicians I've got in this band. I've got some of the finest artists in South Africa in this group. I'm very lucky.
You're telling me.
Bokani Dyer, Sisonke Xonti, Fassie, Reza Khota, you know, now Jonno Sweetman. So at a certain point I go, man, I've got these sketches, I've got these little ideas, these songs. Who are the right guys to realize this, to manifest these basic ideas into something real in the world? And sometimes these are the guys, the best guys in the world to do it, you know. And that time came, and I was like, it's this selection of sketches I've written has to be realized, and these are the guys to do it. And you just make it happen. But this was definitely a much more streamlined process. It really flowed, you know, and I think from start to finish, it was incredibly fulfilling and incredibly joyous.
Improvisation on this album, though, a lot of it came with this album a lot, and you can also hear it, you know, the moment you listen to it. Why is that? Why was that so key in this album, and what is the significance of this in terms of growth of who Shane Cooper is?
Absolutely. You know, the beauty is that jazz music itself is inherently built around presenting a sort of subject to a group of musicians in a room and letting them converse around that subject, you know. And so from one day to the next, you could have a few new opinions around that subject and some held opinions as well. And so when you're creating a project like this, for me, this new album is really based on different African groove styles with a bedrock of jazz. So there's a lot of improvisation, but the top layer is drawing from grooves from West Africa, from North Africa, from South Africa in a big way. These different kind of drum patterns and bassline ideas. But then when we're talking about these subjects, we're improvising and we're conversing on top as a band. You know, hey, Sisonke, what do you think about that? Things like that. And for me, that's an incredibly powerful tool because it allows you to see things in a way that you can't on your own. It's about collaboration. It's about meeting up with people who you respect musically, and you're curious to see what do they think about this idea musically. It sounds a bit abstract, but it's really, if you go to live shows, you see that firsthand. That's why experiencing jazz live is really the best way, because the album's one thing, but the show's going to have an extra edge, and then the next night it's got an even different edge. So I think that's the beauty of it. It's a real living thing. Playing a jazz song is like bringing to life a living organism, and in that moment it's going to act slightly differently to any other night, you know. And on a record we try to capture that energy and harness a few of the extra tools that you have access to in the studio that you can't get live, and I feel like we've done that really nicely on this album. It's a perfect marriage of that sort of wild, free improvisation energy, but also the kind of control that you can harness in a studio environment.
All right, Shane, thank you so much. I'm excited about this album. Thank you so much for talking to us, Shane Cooper. He's a bassist, composer, producer, speaking to us about his latest project, it's Finish the Sun, which he describes as a sound portrait of Africa that is both uncannily personal and exhilaratingly social experience. Quick ad break. We're back after this. Stay with us.